Was the following story a case of alien abduction or a mysterious case of teleportation? In early May 1968, Dr. Geraldo Vidal and his wife Rafa were driving in their Peugeot 403 near Bahia Blanca in the southwest of Buenos Aires in Argentina. They were to attend a family reunion to be held in the city of Chascomús, about 120 kilometers from Buenos Aires and to the south. They left the gathering shortly before midnight and decided to drive to Mapu, a city about 150 kilometers south of Chascomús, as they wished to visit some friends and relatives. As they were driving along National Highway number 2, there were people they knew in the car in front of them that were visiting the same friends and relatives in Mapu. That family reached Mapu without incident, but not so for the Vidals, who failed to turn up at the house, which concerned those awaiting their arrival. The couple that had arrived at the house were also concerned about the Vidals and decided to retrace their steps, figuring the car may have broken down or worse. But they returned to Mapu telling friends and family that they could find no trace of the car or the Vidals. Meanwhile, Dr. Vidal and his wife found themselves parked by the side of the road, dazed and confused, and appeared to have lost consciousness. Everything appeared hazy, and they were totally disoriented and had severe neck pain. After composing themselves, they resumed driving, but now found that their surroundings were totally different and the scenery had now changed. There were now mountains in the distance which looked like volcanoes. The weather outside was warm, whereas when they left their home, it was cold. They decided to stop the car and check on their whereabouts, and after talking to some local residents, found to their utter astonishment that they were now just outside Mexico City. How could a couple from Argentina suddenly end up on a rural road in Mexico, far from home in such a short period of time? They had somehow travelled over 7,000 kilometres from Argentina to Mexico. How could that be? They also realised that they had lost time and had no recollection of what had happened to them and could not account for the last 2 days. The couple could not work out what had happened to them, as they did not remember seeing any bright lights in the sky or the car being lifted up into the air. They also noticed that their car was covered in burn marks as if someone had used a blowtorch. They decided to drive to Mexico City, which was about 1 hour away, and head to the Argentinian consulate to seek assistance. They spoke with a man in the consulate by the name of Rafael Lopez Pellegrini, who allowed Dr. Vidal to use the consulate's phone. He then called his friend Martin Rapellini, who lived in the town of Maipú. That was about 281 kilometers south of Buenos Aires. Dr. Vidal told his friends that he wanted everyone back home to know that he and his wife were safe and would soon return to Argentina. Dr. Vidal found that friends and family had been searching for them for the past 2 days and was shocked and mystified to find the couple in their car were thousands of kilometers away in central Mexico. The Argentine consul asked the couple to relate their story to him, but also requested they not tell anyone about their ordeal. After their briefing with Mr. Pellegrini, the consul made some phone calls and the Vidal's car was immediately impounded. In another strange turn of events, their car was sent to the United States for research, and they never saw their car again. However, when they arrived back in Buenos Aires, they found that a new Peugeot 403 was waiting for them at the airport. The strange thing is that nobody could tell them who was responsible for replacing their vehicle. The obvious explanation was the Americans because they'd taken their car, but why did they replace it with a new car? And what did they do with the original car? The story of their abduction did eventually get out, as there had been many eyewitnesses the Vidals had spoken to on the side of the road in rural Mexico, as well as their friends and relatives back in Argentina. Although the media in Mexico kept quiet about the incident, several newspapers back home in Argentina wrote about their ordeal. A Buenos Aires newspaper called La Mañana reported the presence of UFOs in the area at the time of the abduction. UFO researchers believe that the story of the Vidal case in La Mañana caused many other people to speak out about sightings and experiences with UFOs in the region south of Buenos Aires, but it also triggered a wave of hysteria throughout the Argentine countryside, for some people came forward claiming to have seen strange objects in the sky, believing them to be extraterrestrials. Suddenly, news outlets in both Mexico and Argentina abruptly stopped covering Vidal case, even though the public still showed a keen interest in it. Did this order come from the United States, and if so, why? It appears that the series of terrifying events was too much for his wife Rafa, and she had to be admitted to a mental institution on her return to Argentina. There was never any mention of her being released, and she died of leukemia the following year in 1969. Was Rafa Vidal's leukemia somehow caused by exposure to large doses of radiation when they were abducted or transported? How was it that Dr. Vidal and his wife were transported a great distance from Argentina to Mexico, and was there an actual UFO involved? There have been many stories around the world about mysterious teleportations of people hundreds of thousands of kilometres from their home. Apparently, the Vidal case was not the first to be reported of people ending up in strange places, dazed and bewildered. One of the most famous cases took place in the 16th century, where a Spanish soldier called Gil Perez was a palace guard of the governor's place in Manila, and the governor had recently been assassinated. On the morning of October 24, 1593, Perez decided to take a short nap and lean against the palace wall. When he opened his eyes, he was shocked to find himself in an unknown location. After making inquiries, he found he was in Mexico City. How could he be in Manila on the morning of the 23rd of October and suddenly be in Mexico City on the evening of the 24th of October? That was over 14,000 kilometres. Perez was questioned by the Spanish Inquisition, where he told authorities that he had travelled from Manila to Mexico in less time than it takes a cock to crow, and that the governor had recently been assassinated. It seems the Inquisition did not accept his story and imprisoned him for desertion. Gil Perez was in a jail in Mexico City for 2 months until a Manila merchant ship arrived from the Philippines. The crew told authorities about the governor's assassination, just as Perez had said. One of the passengers on the ship knew Perez and swore that he'd seen the soldier in the Philippines on October the 23rd. The tribunal in Mexico had no other choice but to accept Perez's story and released him from jail. The authorities then sent him back to the Philippines.